boy, look at that sailboat. Drop that off
Tape rolling?
Yep, rolling.
Okay. Bob, when we talked to you in March, there was almost a death pall over the boating industry because of the fuel situation, what it was. The government was threatening to take boating privileges away from weekend boaters. Things seem to have eased up a bit now. Are you more optimistic about the current situation for this industry?
I'm more optimistic, but at the time, I believe we were discussing the tremendous interference of Department of Energy and their, what shall I say, stupid approach at trying to resolve a problem that could not be solved in the method they were working at. And I think I had mentioned I had just testified, or I was getting ready to testify at one of the hearings. And at the time, the story, the way they were trying to present it, was something that would have literally ruined the boating industry. And after going into the depth of it, finally the government saw the major mistake they were making. And right now, I'd say that they're not going to stick their nose into the depth that they were. There's no sense in it in the first place. Fuel is not the problem, and to take all forms of recreation away from people in the United States would be catastrophic. Right now, I feel that the number one thing that we worked on a year ago, and what we're still working on, is to create more economical boats. On all the tests we conduct on the smaller category of boats, we directly emphasize fuel economy. We run fuel flow checks on all the boats, and we report accordingly. And we have seen in the last 5 years a decrease of approximately 25 to 28% in fuel consumption at any given speed. Or I can reverse it and say that the speeds have gone up comparatively for the amount of fuel use. This has been done through improvements in hull designs, primarily, weights of boats, engine efficiency, propeller designs. Everything has been working in the right direction to make boating more economical.
You know, you hold virtually every powerboating record there is to hold. I guess man has always been meant to seek faster speeds on water, on land, and air. Why did you specifically wind up on the water, do you think?
Well, I guess because when I was 13, I learned to fly, and I kind of got the flying out of my system, and then I went in for race cars, and somewhere along the line, I guess I got that out of my system, and then I became acquainted with boats some 33 years ago, and during that period of time, I've more and more fallen in love with boats. I never get my fill of it, obvious by the fact that when I complete boat tests, I usually go home and take one of my own boats out for a ride. I've got my own menagerie of boats.
You're a true lover of the sport, then?
I'd say I'm a true lover or crazy. I don't know if I mentioned last year when I talked that I have had quite a few accidents, a lot of broken bones, etc., but probably the most important thing was that I've had 2 brain concussions, and that undoubtedly is what keeps me going in the field I'm in.
Let me ask you, in these performance trials, what are the things that are most important to the people who read your magazine? What are the things that they want to know that you can find out for them in conducting these trials?
First, they like to hear a lot of glamour data, and I don't like that. I keep working on our editor to publish the more important things that they normally wouldn't be thinking about. Boats are generally much more romantic than an automobile. The color schemes, the interior styling, they're really beautiful things to look at. But there's all the difference in night and day between a good boat and a bad boat. A bad one is dangerous, and there are probably too many people in the country that are driving bad boats that don't know that they have a bad one. They don't know how much fun it could be to be boating in a good piece of equipment. Certainly I'm not trying to use a commercial here. If they want to get information on good versus bad, if they would write to Powerboat magazine in Van Nuys, California, and I'm sure the magazine would be happy to send them copies of the test reports.
I can say, you know, I've subscribed to a lot of different consumer magazines in the field of stereo and video and this and that, and I read the copy of Powerboat, and I think I see more in-depth testing of products there than any of the other fields that I'm particularly interested in, so I can say from reading it that you really go into depth maybe more than any magazine I've read.
Well, we appreciate the opportunity. First off, we do it strictly for the sport itself. As we don't charge. We perform the test as a service. It costs me money, but that's not important. The important thing is I feel like I'm doing something worthwhile for the world around me, the general public. I'm involved in a lot of charity items of the conventional type, but this is a type of charity I think that is far more in-depth value to the general public than donating money to some cause.
Let me ask you one other thing. I know you just set a record, I believe I read in the bio, where you're running maybe 119 knots. When you're running at speeds like that over the water, sitting here at the controls, you mentioned you've been in accidents a number of times, brain concussions and things. I wonder if that isn't always on your mind when you're going at that speed, because you're always on a hairline of another accident. What's going through your mind when you're hitting top speeds like that?
I don't mean it as a joke, but one thing that you do think of is be careful. You know you're running on the ragged edge. The particular type boat you're referring to is called a tunnel type hull, and you run those boats in a trim position similar to a person trying to balance a chair on two legs. You're trimmed operating a boat on just the after part of the running planes of the boat, and it's a balance item. And although it doesn't react as quick as a two-legged chair, it is a balance problem, and true, I've blown over backwards a few times, and that's how I've received so many injuries. But I feel that the cunning that you test yourself on is a total change of pace from what I'm normally involved in. I'm involved in several corporations, and as a businessman, I guess I have to think hard, work hard, but when I go out and get in a race boat, it's a total change of pace.
Bob, thank you for talking with us, and best of luck as your future continues in boat racing.
Thank you. I hope I'm at it a long time.
Thanks, Bob.
First, they like to hear a lot of glamour data, and I don't like that. I keep working on our editor to publish the more important things that they normally wouldn't be thinking about. Boats are generally much more romantic than an automobile. The color schemes, the interior styling, they're really beautiful things to look at. But there's all the difference in night and day between a good boat and a bad boat. A bad one is dangerous, and there are probably too many people in the country that are driving bad boats that don't know that they have a bad one. They don't know how much fun it could be to be boating in a good piece of equipment. If they want to get information on good versus bad, if they would write to Powerboat magazine in Van Nuys, California, and I'm sure the magazine would be happy to send them copies of the test reports. I hate to say this, but your water's much better. We do our small craft type of testing at Lake Mead, which is near Las Vegas. 3 weeks from now, we'll be testing 25 boats at that body of water. And as you know, we just finished the 25 boats at Cypress Gardens. And then the boats that we're doing here. Occasionally, I will test offshore boats on the West Coast, in the ocean, on special request. But along with the hospitality of Florida, the peacefulness, and the fact it gives us all a vacation to come down here.
You do a lot of work while you're here too, though, but I know you put these boats through some rigorous testing.
Yes, there are some people can't quite understand how I take it. They say at the end of the day I must be bush, but I really have to tell the truth. At the end of the day, I feel like I've had a very enjoyable, relaxing time, and more important, I've gained a lot of knowledge that I wouldn't have otherwise. Yes, we tell the truth, and if we lose an advertiser, we lose him. We don't truly depend on the advertising to totally support us. I personally love boating, and I subsidize the magazine and have for many, many years. Sometimes it makes money and sometimes it doesn't. But if the difference between making money or losing money and telling the truth or not telling the truth, I'll stick with the truth. There are 3 boats that I tested in the last 2 days at Cypress Gardens that the manufacturers will be told that they have a choice to either pull it off the market, improve the product and resubmit it for our testing, or we write the story.
Everyone knows how much the nation's poor economy has hurt the auto industry. How's the boating industry responded to the economic situation?
The primary thing is the boating industry has gone to work on creating some economy models that are good boats. And through our test program, we have done a great deal to improve the quality of the boats, which we're very proud of, which is primarily the reason that I go into this program. I feel it's my contribution back to boating for all the thrills and excitement and fun that I've had in the last several years in my racing.
Powerboat builders travel from as far away as Michigan and Oklahoma to have their boats tested by the staff of Powerboat magazine at Cypress Gardens. The tests are an annual event in which new and revised boats are checked to see how safe they are. Powerboat publisher Bob Nordskog, a champion offshore power racer and 30-year veteran of boating, handles most of the testing himself.
We're testing to find out if the boats are acceptable for general public use. Over the period of years, we found many boats that didn't meet what our standards are for family-type boats, could be used by the people for the purpose intended. And when we have one that isn't what it's up to the specification we feel it should be, we tell the boat manufacturer that they have a bad product, and if they want to correct it, fine. If they want to take it off the market, fine. But if they don't do either one, then we write the story and tell how poor a product it is. So
the future of these boats being tested can be made or broken by the rating they get in Powerboat magazine. But Bob says that's not his purpose. His purpose in rating the boats is to make things safer for you, the boating public. I'm John Russell, Night Watch Sports, Cypress Gardens.
If you spend $15,000 for a pleasure craft, you'd want to make sure you got your money's worth. That's where Bob Nordskog comes in. His job is to test pleasure crafts. Bob came to Cypress Gardens in Winter Haven to evaluate the latest products of 25 boat manufacturers. There aren't many boats that come off the assembly line that haven't been scrutinized by this expert test driver.
Boat manufacturers, too many of them, are not familiar with their competitors' products. They don't experiment to find out who has a good boat and then copy it. Instead, they just make a boat. They don't think of the consequences.
Bob will put a craft like this jet boat through wake jumps and slalom runs to see if the boat is controllable and has been structured properly. His evaluations carry a lot of weight because the results are published in Powerboat magazine, which he owns. But if he finds a problem, the manufacturer is the first to know.
Give them the choice of either correcting the problem or withdrawing the boat from their manufacturing line. And if they don't, then we print a story. We tell the public that the boat is no good and why.
Bob says the consumer shouldn't trust his eye when shopping for a boat. Instead, find the boat that you like and dig up a performance report before you buy. In Winter Haven, I'm Tony Edwards, Newswatch 8 Sports.
Welcome to Cypress Gardens, Florida. Beautiful garden spot, but also a very fine spot to be testing powerboats, and that's our subject today. We're going to go along with a real expert in testing a boat. His name is Bob Nordskog. He's the man behind Powerboat magazine, and many of you remember Bob when he raced Powerboat in the big ocean races in the Swift Hurricane Classic in St. Petersburg. I imagine a lot of you are wondering right off the bat what a man like Bob Nordskog is looking for when he tests a boat.
Primary thing that I'm looking for is a safe handling boat, something that the general public is not going to get in trouble with. There are too many boats that are manufactured that don't have that as a prime consideration.
All right, Bob, the average person goes out to buy a boat. You're a racer. You know what you're looking for. How does the average person know outside of reading your report?
Unfortunately, they're not going to know, and that's the horrible part of it. When people buy an automobile and they go for a drive in it, they know what to expect. Either it accelerates or it doesn't. It has comfortable seating or it doesn't, or they like the styling or they don't. But with a boat, most of the boats that are sold are very nice looking. They have sparkly exteriors, a lot of chrome, fancy interiors, and that doesn't mean a thing because they can be a definite hazard.
Bob, is there a rule of thumb when it comes to power?
Certainly the number one rule of thumb is don't seek to have a powerful boat. It's better to have something that is not powerful. I think of the problem areas that many men have when they'll buy a boat that pleases them and frightens their wife. I think it's an utterly ridiculous thing, and if they want to bring their boating career to a short stop, is buy a boat that frightens their wife.
Bob, talk to me just a little bit about the biggest temptation in powerboat racing when it comes to the average person buying it. They want to buy the big engine for the little boat.
Unfortunately, this is true. They want power, and they don't know what they're going to do with it. Just before you arrived, I tested a boat that was way overpowered. Consequently, I rated the boat very low. Had the boat been properly powered, I would have rated the boat high. I'm going to be talking to the manufacturer and not only recommend, but tell them they better very well put a smaller engine on there, or we will write up a bad report.
Okay, let's talk about Bob Nordskog and what he looks for now. What kind of tests are you putting these boats through?
The tests that we're running start from such things as tracking at low speed, whether the boats tilt or not. We go on into acceleration tests to determine whether they can accelerate with a heavy load, length of time it takes to get on plane, whether they track correctly on a slalom. We have a regular slalom course just like they have in competition snow skiing. We check to see if the boat will turn at a proper speed, both at 20, 30, and 40 miles per hour. We do wake jumping over a very large wake of a large, heavy photo boat they have here at Cypress Gardens.
Well, I hope that you've learned a little something about what goes into testing a powerboat, and we certainly don't recommend that you do things like the wake test and things like that. For that kind of testing, you're going to leave it to a guy like Bob Nordskog. He knows exactly what he's doing, and he's the kind of guy that should test a powerboat. Bob Nordskog is one of the best, no question about it. Let's get one more. Yeah.
Oh, that's cute.
The old and the new are often in conflict, but Channel 7's Frank Crocker reports right now in San Francisco there is a great example of the new working to save the very old.
If you've ever been to the Hyde Street Pier next to Fisherman's Wharf, then you know it's like taking a step back in time. 7 pieces of maritime artwork, a tribute to the rich history of West Coast seafaring. But old ships only get older if there's not enough money around to refurbish them. And that's the dilemma facing the National Maritime Museum. Restoration experts say the wooden ships here are the highest priority, like the old ferry boat Eureka. She has dry rot up and down her high timber bulkheads, and the estimate for repairing that problem alone is $3.7 million.
I'm going to try to bring some interest to these ancient vessels, historic ships. I'm a great lover in antiques, as you can see by looking at me.
Meet 73-year-old Bob Nordskog, a Southern California man who likes to get money together for charitable causes. But he's actually better known for one other thing. Offshore powerboat racing. Nordskog, at the wheel here, is the oldest known racer in the world, with a list of records longer than his boat. On Saturday, August 23rd at 11 in the morning, he'll be leading 2 races on San Francisco Bay, with all the proceeds going to restore the historic ships. Nordskog hopes this will stimulate interest and plans more events in the years to come.
And I see no reason why we can't stimulate some very large funds to take care of the treasures that you do have here. You've got the best collection of historic ships anywhere in the United States, and it would be a shame to have them disappear and have your grandchildren or great-grandchildren not know what the history of San Francisco was.
As Nordskog puts it, he'd like to utilize excitement in the present in honor of the past. In San Francisco, Frank Crocker, Channel 7 News.
And Frank says the best place to watch the races on Saturday is at the Pier 39 area of Fisherman's Wharf.